again, and welcome to The Luxury of Choice, a B2B sales and business podcast brought to you by the training team of George James Limited. My name is Steve Vaughan. I'm a member of the training team here, and I'm also the producer and host of this podcast. And today I have two of my colleagues from the training team with me, Christian Walter and Jonathan Zlezinski. So, gentlemen, how are you both?
Doing well.
Very good, Steve.
So, Christian, you're in Switzerland. I'm here in the UK. It's pretty chilly here. I guess it is where you are as well. Jonathan's loving the Southern California temperature probably still right now at the moment.
A little bit. We have some rain though, so it's
some rain. Okay,
we've had a few days of rain, which is a little strange for us down here in Southern California.
So we had the first snowfall today.
Oh, you did,
and I always love that. You know, I'm still a little child when it comes to snow. So we had a dusting, not much more, but it was lovely.
Love it.
We had snow in places in the UK, only a little bit. It always amazes me that we always seem to be surprised when it snows here in Britain, considering we're in a northern hemisphere, northern latitude country. You know, we seem to be a bit surprised. Oh, it snowed like it's not supposed to in November, but no doubt if we have a serious snowfall, it'll bring the country to its knees like it normally does. But hopefully that's going to be certainly not before Christmas anyway. Anyway, let's not talk about the weather too much. Let's get on with today's topic. So, what I wanted to explore today really is what do our customers want, and particularly what do people who are buying laboratory equipment consumables, what do they really want? And we can take that in two ways, as whether it's a person actually using the equipment, or if it's somebody different, somebody actually placing the order, or both really. So when we look at what our customers really want from us as a supplier, you know, what would you take as like a first headline view, Christian, really? So, you know, we're supplying equipment, consumables to a laboratory. What is it that those people who are buying those things, what are they looking for?
I think what they really want is for us to take the time to understand their problems and their workflows.
Okay.
And they don't want us to step in and start selling as if there was no tomorrow. They don't want us to kind of rub our hands together and be Prince Charming. That's not what they're looking for. They're actually looking for somebody who takes the pain to understand what their challenges are and what their processes are. And I think that's the most important part.
As opposed to just turning up and pitching product, Jonathan, in that case.
Yeah, I think Christian kind of really gets to the point of it's about understanding their needs, right? What is it? Someone who's going to be using some kind of equipment. Hey, does somebody understand really what I want? But I'll just put it kind of very generally. I think that these buyers really want something that's going to support their science, help them with their work, and just not complicate it, right? There's so many products that they get thrown out. There's so many things that get kind of tossed at them. What really works for them and what's not going to complicate their lives, right? You know, they're humans after all, right? They want something that's going to be seamless, something that's going to kind of help them out. Christian hits it right. The first thing is kind of understanding what those needs are and then being able to provide them with that kind of seamless solution. You know, in my experience, it's always been, hey, what can work best for me in my work at the lab? You got to understand that need first, you know, and then be able to provide it for them.
I like the word seamless, Johnson.
Yeah, me too.
Because seamless means it's not an isolated piece of kit. It fits into an overall workflow. Actually, it matters to their whatever task they're doing in a particular lab. And we should never think that our instrument is the bee's knees and the most important thing in a customer's daily routine. It just may be a small puzzle. And how does it fit in? And how can we make it seamless? I love that.
Yeah, what
Make it easy for them. Yeah.
What kind of I looked for a lot of times in the lab is complements, right? How is what am I selling complementing kind of what's already in their lab or the work that they need to do? So again, it doesn't always have to be this great, shiny, spectacular thing on the hill. It really just needs to fit well with kind of what they're doing. And I think that's in my experience, it's really what the scientific buyer wants. Is my work going to get done, you know, and is it going to be kind of very seamless and less complicated?
And I think this is a reason why, as we always do, we encourage salespeople to make sales calls face-to-face as opposed to over the technology we're using now, because it's very difficult to do that over Zoom or Teams. You know, you can have a nice conversation, but you can't really get into what it is that they're doing without actually having a look and seeing what they're doing, really. So if I'm a scientific bias, if I'm the person in the lab using the equipment, yes, I need people to understand my workflow and hopefully help me, improve my workflow, optimize my workflow. But I have more things that are important to me as well, I would think, than just that. What other things do you think would be relevant for, let's say, a head of lab who's buying some new technology? What other things would they be very keen to understand from us as a supplier?
I think kind of reliability and support. What are they going to get as they start utilizing this instrument, or as they start utilizing these kind of reagents? What's the support I'm going to get? Is it reliable? Is it making, is it working and doing kind of what the sales rep had said? I think those are kind of the big things that happen once you start getting your product into these people. It's like, okay, well, now what's going to happen after I start using it? Where are you as a company to support me and make sure that this is kind of reliable and fitting into those workflows that we talked about before?
Yeah, absolutely. Christian?
I want to go back quickly to one thing you said about face-to-face, because I believe it's extremely relevant. As much as we are interested to see the customer face-to-face, because then we can better understand their needs, I think the customer must also have a vital interest of meeting us face-to-face, because it's all about trust, isn't it? And what Jonathan just said about reliability and support, and you never know ahead of time whether a particular piece of kit will work, but you deal with the people and you build an image in your head whether these are reliable, trustworthy people. And so I believe this kind of trust is best established in a face-to-face conversation.
Absolutely.
And if I were a customer, I would really try and get a feel for the people behind the company. Because only, company attracts the people it deserves. So the good people will stick with good companies.
Yeah.
Well, Christian, if we're going to back up, let's back up one more time, right? So it's when we start talking about qualifying them and understanding their needs, for me, going into the lab was the best thing that I can do, because you can see what equipment was there, right? If you're on a Zoom call, sometimes, how do you know what kind of equipment they're using or what's going on? And just being able to walk around the lab would open up so much of me to kind of start asking questions about. So I think you're 100% right about qualifying, getting these face-to-faces, and then what can we build off of that based on kind of what they're going to be looking for from us.
It's so important. I did some training this week for a customer, and I got a chance to look around their demo lab for half an hour. And I never go into labs these days, and I was quite excited, really. Just you got one of those, and I haven't seen one of these for ages. And it's the best thing you can do, really. And of course, if we're selling to scientists, scientists are the most skeptical people on earth. I think it's important that we don't just use words. Salespeople don't go to customers and say our quality is a bit average. We all say our quality is good, our support's good, our backup's good. Everybody's got to say that, but
and it's easy to use.
Here is it's easy to use. Yeah, nobody says ours is a bit difficult. Ours is quite hard to use. I wouldn't buy ours. We all say these phrases. So clearly, if you're selling to scientists, you've got to better prove it, right?
Yeah.
You've got to better prove it. Do you agree? Yeah.
Yeah. I was just thinking about a really good way of proving this, or a good way of also cementing that relationship with your customer. And that is, if there is an element of co-creation, particularly if it's let's say it's a bit more sophisticated piece of kit, it's a next generation sequencer, or it's a liquid chromatography mass spec system, or where there are some workflow elements, maybe some particular demands, maybe some analyses that require a bit of understanding, we can then co-create the solution. And I think that really then approaches what the customer really wants, because he can shape what they get. And I think that really helps us to overcome the question marks about ease of use and so on.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. Jonathan?
Yeah, kind of just similar kind of what Christian was saying. I think it's just kind of that ease of use kind of stuff, and just making sure that we're all aligned with what they're thinking of and what their needs are.
So if I'm running a quality control lab or something like that, clearly things that I'm going to want is obviously the performance of the product, but also guaranteed uptime. So as you say, the service capability. I always do something like carrying data like first time fix rate for my service team. To prove how quickly we can fix things if things do go wrong. And of course, anything made by man can go wrong and does go wrong. And also the ability to respond quickly, and that's where obviously service contracts and things, of course, add value. What about if I'm the person writing the order out now? So, the purchasing person as opposed to the guy in the lab. What are they looking for? What are they looking for from us as salespeople, Christian?
Discount?
Besides discount?
No, it's part of their job, and we should look at it like that. It's if you're a purchaser, that's part of your job. You need to get the best price possible. But I think there's a lot more they want as well, because they want to deal with a company that has a good future. I think that's very important. They are also interested in a long-term relationship. They want honesty, because I think they've seen it all. They come across lots of excuses. And if I were a procurement person, I'd much rather have a sales guy tell me, hey, sorry, we can't do that, than yes, and it doesn't happen in the end.
Absolutely. And I always use the example, if I was a purchasing manager of, say, a car factory or something like that, and I went and ordered a part that was cheap, but not good enough for the job, that I could put a whole car factory on stop, or even worse, cause accidents and things. So it's not just about the price, Jonathan, is it? There's other things that purchasing people have to think about as well.
Yeah. I think that the purchaser role takes a slightly different kind of spin in the States versus kind of Europe and the UK.
Tell me more.
But I will say that, the purchaser is looking for competence, right? They have a set of, maybe they need some T's and C's, maybe they need to understand kind of where the pricing is coming from. And they're just looking to you to be efficient, competent, reply to them and kind of just help them out and, assuage the sale, I should say. In my experience, the sale was kind of done either at that, the department level or the PI level or the user level. And then when it got to purchasing, it was more about the paperwork and getting kind of things through, which is, I think, some of the differences that you all see, in Europe and in the UK. But again, to me, it comes down to, what do they want? They want competency, right? They want someone who's going to be able to, again, just like we're addressing the user's needs, what's the purchaser's needs? What are they looking for? And how can you really be, kind of there as efficiently as possible? They're trying to get these things through, right? How can we be as efficient as possible to help them with their role?
To make their life easy.
Yeah, exactly.
Is the key point here. I've worked for companies in the past where getting the technical decision to go our way was the easy bit. Getting the customer to agree to what were quite stringent T's and C's from our side was the hard bit, really. And I'm not saying we should just give in and just accept whatever the customer wants in terms of T's and C's, but I guess there's no reason why we can't have a conversation about those things, such as T's and C's, early on, rather than leaving it to some kind of bun fight after the technical decision has gone our way. Because if we're in front of a purchasing person, Christian, then we've won the deal. The technical decision is to go our way 9 times out of 10, really, I would think, unless you think otherwise.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with that. I'm just, I've been doing quite a lot of work recently on emotions and how important emotions are for rational decision making. And I believe that is true for the lab person, the lab manager taking a decision. We call it a technical decision. I don't think it's a technical decision. It's an emotional decision with some rational components. And then it's also true for the purchasing guy, because the purchasing guy could potentially veto a decision. And that is also a problem. So again, it's an emotional decision also for the purchasing guy. And we need to connect with both these decision makers on an emotional level. And how do we do that? I believe it's about how we make them feel about ourselves, about our product, about our company. Do we tell a good tale? Do we smile a good smile? And do we make them feel at ease? And I think if we can do that, then they will probably think, we're getting what we want from them. But it's a lot about emotions and not just rationale.
I totally agree. And Jonathan, I know that you're very interested in using emotions in business. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, the point is exactly right. We're humans, right? We are emotional beings, right? And I think when we look at this, if we put it into an EQ context, right, this is actually relationship management, which is that skill, right? So in relationship management, there could be 2, 3 parties, whatever it is, and each party has a need, right? They have a goal that they're trying to get to. So you have your need, they have their need. It's about working together to figure out how do we both work together through this, and identifying kind of that. Now, you don't have to be best friends with these people, but you have to realize that there's things that they're trying to get through, right? There's things that you're trying to get through. And the other component to it is kind of what Christian was talking about was just social awareness, recognizing kind of the state that they're in, right? Are they upset? Are they happy? Are they, how are they feeling about us? And then, of course, taking kind of our emotions into account, as we deal with that to build this relationship and make sure that we get to kind of that common goal that we have.
So how important is empathy in doing that?
I think it's huge, right? I think empathy in sales is humongous, right? How do you put yourself in someone else's shoes and try to figure out kind of what's going on with them, right? I mean, you could kind of talk to a customer one day who maybe something happened at home in the morning, right? As they were going on, maybe they got into, a fight with a sibling or a partner or something, right? So their emotional state isn't that great. And then here you are trying to sell them something and maybe it's just not the best kind of time for that conversation. I think that kind of empathy is huge for a sales rep to have, to be able to just recognize, hey, maybe this isn't the right time for this, But I also think it kind of falls back to kind of what Christian was saying about how have you built these relationships? How have you built kind of some of the trust and things like that you really want to see out of your customers?
And trust isn't something you can just instantly start with, is it? You can't have instant trust. I think when you start doing business with an individual in a company, there's some degree of assumed trust, but that deep-seated trust only comes with time. But it also can take a second to destroy, can't it, guys? Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah.
I mean, I go back to kind of my Bio-Rad days when I was selling gels and PCR reagents, walking, hall to hall. And I would always have a green Bio-Rad shirt on. And I was always at this one account in Baltimore every Wednesday, right? So they knew me as the green shirt guy. But they knew on Wednesdays I would be there, right? So it's again, kind of like what do customers want? Customers, they're humans. They want consistency. They want to know that someone's going to be there. And it was the fact that over years of being there every Wednesday, you build these relationships, you build this trust that they know you're going to be there, where they can kind of come to you, call you on things like that. I mean, I wouldn't get emails because it'd be like, oh, I know you're going to be here. And it's about kind of filling that need of it's more the human side of what they want. Of course, they want products that are going to work for their workflows, can help them with their science. But there is the human component to it too, which is, oh, cool, this guy's really here all the time supporting me. Yeah. He's going to be able to address my needs, take me for a coffee if we want to go get a coffee. And I think that's the other element is not only the workflow and seamlessness, it's the human side of what customers want.
Be a real person. I should point out to people listening to this podcast that Jonathan's wearing a blue shirt today, not a green shirt. So, Christian, what are your thoughts about the importance of trust when working with both lab and purchasing people?
It's paramount. It's super important. I think, people buy from people and not companies from companies.
Absolutely.
And trust works on both levels. Trust works on the people level and trust works on the company level. And we have to work on both. We have to try and convince our customers that we are trustworthy, that our company is trustworthy. And we can do that with a variety of little things. What we can't do is tell them, hey, you should do business with us because we are trustworthy. I think that's the wrong approach.
Yeah. Now, as I say, nobody goes to companies and say we're a bit shady, do they?
Well, I think there's some inherent trust built in the brands, right? So when you look at, the goodwill of a brand or the brand loyalty that it has, I mean, I can remember starting in certain sales roles and just having customers kind of welcome me because of the brand and the trust that they built. Mm-hmm. But when we talk about that human to human connection, that's the thing that builds kind of over time. And I think what we were talking about just a little bit ago is like, sure, customers, especially scientists, they wanted something that works for their science, that fits into their workflow, seamless. But at the end of the day, they're also human, right? So they're going to buy from another human that connects with them, where they feel trustworthy. They know they can get kind of the support, and they know that they're going to be able to have someone who kind of goes that extra distance. And it's just something that, again, I've always found in my career is by being able to kind of be that person for customers.
Yeah.
even not having the best products in the world, they would usually come back to me for things that they know are going to work within their lab in their scientific setting.
There's a salesperson I follow on LinkedIn, and she's very active on LinkedIn, and her name's Jessica, I think from memory. If you listen to this, Jessica, please come back. And she calls herself the antibody queen of the North. She's based in the north of England. And I always like her feeds. And one of the things she put quite recently on there was, have I done the right thing? I told my customer to buy from my competitor.
Wonderful. I like it.
Well, I did too. What do you think, Jonathan?
I love that. It's something that I've done all throughout my career, right? If it's not the best fit, hey, I think these are a few other options. The fact that you can actually give them other options too, again, what that does is it builds credibility, but it also starts to build trust that the person that I'm talking to actually has my interests in mind, not necessarily their interests. I think obviously we want to try to sell our products as much as possible.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But when we do have that time, it needs to be, hey, I think that these are some other options for you. And then, hey, I also know the rep, happy to connect you with them, right? I think that's the kind of stuff that really proves your value, shows your credibility. And then again, as Christian was kind of this trust conversation we're having, really kind of starts to dial up that trust level.
Mm-hmm. Why did you like it, Christian?
So I believe we should always sell what the customer needs, not what we want to sell.
Absolutely.
And in extreme cases, this may actually be a competitor's solution. I've always been very skeptical about upselling.
Okay, tell me more. What do you mean by that?
Well, companies always have different levels and different models. And, you know it from the car industry. You can upsell, you can get free, whatever, alloy wheels or super GT stripes and that's fine as long as this is what the customer wants. But as soon as we are actually trying to get more out of the customer than they need, it's abusive. An abusive relationship is not sustainable. So I'd rather sell them a cheap piece of kit if it's sufficient for their needs.
Yeah.
Make sure they stay happy with that. And if they need something more sophisticated, they will come back to me.
That's a great point. It's treating people like you'd want to be treated yourself, really, isn't it, really? Like you say, if you went into a car showroom and somebody's trying to say you're top of the range, but your budget is, the entry level, then, be realistic, be able to understand that, really. I was thinking while you're talking also about many times that I've been into a lab and walked around a lab with a customer, and I've seen something on the bench and it looked quite shiny and new, but it was also covered in a layer of dust. And I would say, what is that you got there? And the customer would say, I don't know. Somebody bought it before me. We bought it 3 years ago. We've never used it. Does that sound familiar? Can you think of scenarios like that, guys?
Oh, yeah. I mean, to me, it goes back to both those things, right? Just seeing the things that kind of, we used to call them the door stopper. Oh, that's going to be the door and hold the door opener. But it's also about how many times I've been in customers in their labs and they've just told me, we have all the stuff we don't need, right? Either someone or even they were sold, hey, you need this. And then it kind of found out they didn't really need it, right? And I kind of like what Christian was saying about figure that out, get them kind of just what they need, right? And that's really going to provide that base of, okay, cool, this works, seamless, fits into my workflow. Yeah. This guy's not trying to, again, scientists also have an eye for the salesy stuff, right? There's plenty of times I've walked into a lab where they're like, I don't want to be sold, right? Because people do go in and they just do the salesman stuff on them.
Or just turn up a pitch product, basically.
Yeah.
So I have another thing which kind of fits to this discussion.
Go for it.
I totally disagree with salespeople quoting options. So if you quote options as a salesperson to a customer, you obviously haven't done a good enough job to find out what the customer really needs. And it goes a little bit along with the upselling. You quote something cheap and cheerful, and then you quote something a bit more pricey, and of course you're hoping that they go for the pricey version. But if the cheap and cheerful is good enough, then that's what you should stick with, and that's what you should convince the customers, because then you have credibility. And I think credibility in this business is extremely important. And it's trust, then you get trust.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When we do these podcasts, topics obviously rearrange because we don't talk about a topic in isolation. It's all linked to the sales process and what we do as salespeople. But what was springing into my mind while you were talking then, Christian, is the importance of qualification again, really, and fully qualifying the customer's needs. As a sales manager, when I'd get a quote approval from one of my sales team, then I'd get version 2. And then when it got to version 3, I would send it back and say, go back and find out what the customer really wants. Because clearly they don't know. Or they don't know what the budget is. They don't know what the technical need is. And we're just lobbing in quotes, hoping that the customer's going to like them.
I will play a little devil's advocate here, though.
Go for it.
On the flip side of it is sometimes customers want optionality, right?
Okay.
We can figure out what they need. This is what you need. But these are some other options that can also meet your needs with some maybe bells and whistles that could be down the line, could be in the future. And again, I think it's a very human thing to want options, right? So I love, Christian, kind of where you're saying, like, let's make sure we qualify them and figure out what they need and provide them that. But
maybe their need is to have
sometimes
options.
where it's the options. It's like,
yeah, my need is to have various different options so I can go. I guess it's the old 3 quotes. I need 3 quotes for my purchasing people. I guess potentially we could supply all 3 quotes, different versions. And I've done that before. Now I've got a friendly distributor to quote my product. Through them as opposed to from me as well, just to give the customer options. What, as a final wrap up, guys, what are the things you think our customers need, whether they're technical buyers or lab buyers? What kind of thing do you think our customers need if we've missed anything at all, if anything?
Well, I think they need to get us. They need to be efficiently treated. They need to be not messed about. They need to have a reliability in interactions. If they have a question, they need to get a good answer. So there's a lot of basic humanity that needs to happen. And I think these are maybe even more important than doing a superb pitch or knowing every little detail about a particularly complicated analytical instrument. I think it's more important to be responsive and focused and precise and timely.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's nothing wrong with saying to the customer, I don't know, but I know a man who does, is there? Nothing wrong with that at all. Jonathan, your final thoughts on this?
Yeah, just again, I think at the base, right, our customers want something that supports their science, right? And doesn't complicate things. It just kind of makes their lives easier. I think that's also a very human thing, because then the flip side to that is not only providing them with something that meets their needs, then it becomes that human side, right? Where they don't want risk. They don't want hassles. They want to make sure someone's there to support them. Absolutely. They want to make sure somebody understands them and kind of some of their pain points that are going through. So you have the scientific basis, let's get there. And then let's also do the kind of human things, which is, building these connections and showing them that by going with us, you're going to reduce your risk. I'm here to support you. We're going to have, the ability to, help you out with your experiments moving forward.
Absolutely. Jonathan, Christian, thanks very much for your thoughts on that. So if you listen to this, dear listener, make sure you build that trust with your customer and really ask them, what is it you really want? Ask that question. You never know. They might even tell you. Now, if you have enjoyed this episode, then don't forget to subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app. And also, we would love a review. You can review us on either the Apple Podcast app or Spotify now. And we would love a 5-star review. If you have the time, we'd be very, very grateful. As always, we're very interested if you've got any topics you'd like us to raise. You can email the show at podcast@georgejames-training.com. We'll be back again in a couple of weeks' time with another show. In the meantime, happy selling out there, and we'll talk to you soon.